Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Life Talks. Today I have returning guest Justin Copeland on. Justin, welcome to the show again, brother.
What's up, man? It's good to be back. Good to be sitting down with you as always. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, likewise, brother. Let's go right into it. I wanted to start off. You have a group called the Cigar Room. We talked about it briefly last time. Maybe if you can go into what drove you to create that channel for people to, especially men, to come together and talk about it. And what is going on? Any updates on what's going on with that group now?
Dude, that's a good question. It's a big question because it simply comes down to this. It's brotherhood. And back in December, before that, I was looking around and going, man, there's a lot of guys out there. They need a circle that they can depend on. They need a circle essentially of safety. I mean, that sounds kind of corny, and most guys would go, whoa, I don't know. That feels a little too feminine for me, pal. And that's okay, because once we started it and these guys sat down and, the first one, we had like 20 some odd guys on because it was free. It was open to anybody. And that was the platform that we wanted to give. But what I wanted to create was an opportunity for guys to come together. And it almost be like, you think about it like this: when you're sitting around a campfire with a bunch of dudes, you're out camping. If you've not been fortunate enough to do that, I don't know how you're living, but you sit there and a guy starts to tell a story, right? And maybe it's a little bit of that liquid courage induced where they start to share like, oh, this happened to me, and it's kind of a cool, crazy story. Maybe we have a little giggle, but then what happens in that dynamic is those other guys that are sitting there and they're listening, they're going, oh, well, shit, I have a story that's similar. And then they tell the story. And then the next guy tells a story. And what's really happening there is that once the initial guy opens up, now there's this testing process that's happening, right? From the guy that's sharing, he's going, I'm giving you this information. I'm not really sure what you're going to do with it, right? So I'm still going to present it a bit guarded, maybe a little bit comical, but it's something that's a part of me that I'm giving to you. And the other part of that testing is the guys that are listening are going, wait a minute, he's talking about this and I can relate to that. I've got a similar story. And so then they share. And what happens there is like you're in a guy's way, in a guy's world, especially with alpha guys, you're talking about things that might even be a little bit more emotional to you. You're not just you're just not sitting down on someone's couch going, all right, counselor, so this is how this made me feel, right? Where a lot of guys, they don't want to do that. And so when I look at the Cigar Room, we talk about everything from, we did a series in April, the entire month, about essentially the damage of our father and the wounds of our fathers. And I called it Unfathering the Father, because almost everybody in that call is a parent or is a parent to be or working towards being one. And understanding what you dealt with, the traumas or the hurts or the wounds that you felt from your upbringing. A lot of guys have that story, especially when you start getting into the ages of guys that are like 30 and up. We came from kind of that old school style of parenting, right? There was spanking, there was you're seen, not heard, you've got all these rules and stuff, and you're treated like a child, right? And not treated necessarily like, I don't want to say an individual, but it's just vastly different from what you see nowadays with guys like Anthony Miglaroni and Zach Small and these guys that are really pushing peaceful parenting. It's very different. So we did an entire month. And I can tell you right now, that month, guys talking about their dads, you're not going to sit there and do that really with your buddies in the bar, right? That's that campfire stuff that I'm talking about. And so when we sat down and we did that discussion the entire month of April, I mean, there were guys that were crying.
Yeah.
And I was one of them that got choked up, because the stories that these guys are sharing, the transparency that they're providing in this space that is safe, right, is the whole goal and intent of the Cigar Room. It's not just, this big, hard, heavy material. I mean, we talk about things like, understanding your value, the pillars of what it is to be a man, how you're leading your family, how you're leading your community, what's stopping you from chasing that new business idea that you've got. Like, why are you not putting your fucking sack on the table and going after it, right? Because at best, we've got 65 years. Like, I know the average is like 70, but realistically, all of us, like if that's the case, I've got 25 more years on this rock to make an impact. Oh, amateur hour. I didn't turn my phone off.
It's all good.
Fucking shit. But anyway, it's just, that was the end of that.
you said something that really stood out to me. It's something that I definitely resonate with, and it's like finding that therapist, right? I think that we are all hungry for someone who's real, and the balance between almost like the nurture and the nature aspect, right? In other words, I want to be around men who call out my bullshit, but they also aren't doing it from a standpoint where they're putting me down. What they're trying to do is create equal, because when they're down, they want me to pull them up. And it's kind of like that. It's not like, and what turned me off about therapy, this idea, this isn't a knock on therapy, and everyone needs to walk their path. And I think it's a very good thing. It depends on, where it's coming from. I think the problem is someone has their master's or someone has a degree and now they're instantly a master on life. I think you can learn from everybody, and I think that it makes me think of the movie Good Will Hunting. You've seen Good Will Hunting, right?
yeah.
Where it's like he goes through the different therapists and they have degrees and they're really smart. And it wasn't until you met Robin Williams, and Robin Williams in that scene where he's just like, he like attacked him. What's cool about Matt Damon attacking him is because it's like, are you real? Right? Are you just going to give me the BS advice? It's like, be the best version of yourself and it's okay. We can feel the emotions. It's like, no, we're going to do the real work, right? Like deep down, we're going to get into the deep insecurities.
And that's
So
what you hit on. That's big, is that, and not to cut you off, but
no, not at all.
when you start talking about therapy and guys, so like I'm going back to school right now to get just my bachelor's in psychology. So that means like when I'm done with it, I can't do counseling, but ideally the goal is to get to that point, because when I look at talking to you or even the counselors that I know, when I talk with them, and there's some great ones out there that are doing it right by guys, right? Because you can get some of these guys that they're going to go in, like, I'm not afraid to talk about how I feel. Like, I don't feel like my masculinity is in threat if I say, yeah, look, I had this, and this, it's really fucked with me, and so but to me, I'm like, I'm manning up because I want to be able to either carry this better or completely put it aside so that I can be better to the people that matter to me the most.
Yeah, we talked about this.
My wounds are not my family members' responsibility to care, right? It's mine. So it's my job to try to figure out how to fix them or again, live with them better. But the problem is, Michael, I think you get a lot of these therapists, even if they're dudes, you're going to sit down with somebody like you or me and go, Michael, tell me about how that made you feel. You immediately are like, dude, are you trying to grab my ass right now? Like, get the fuck out of here. Right? Like, you're not going to respond to that in the way that they're hoping you will. So when I look at guys like Kike Autry, whose podcast I just went on, he's on Instagram, he's on Twitter. It's as simple as that. He's got @therapy for guys. That's his Instagram page for that. He is somebody that, while yes, he's going to still follow the fundamentals of what counseling is supposed to be. He looks at it, goes, how can I talk to a guy that's an alpha that's not going to want to sit here and listen to me ask him how he's feeling?
Yeah.
Every guy wants that. Every guy wants somebody to say, hey, you all right, man? Like, are you feeling okay? That we want that, but how that's presented is whether we turn on to it or we turn off. And so for me, it's like when I sit down with somebody, I go, why don't you tell me a story? I'll go back to the campfire. I think about it like a fucking campfire. Now in counseling, you can't share personal. Now in life coaching, which I'm getting to do now, you can. I can say, look, I understand this because XYZ scenario.
Yeah.
But if you can sit down like, all right, Michael, I want you to tell me a story about, how your childhood was, and what happened from that situation. And how do you think, and things like that starts to open up the door a bit. And I think for men, that's where when it comes to counseling, that's where that's got to shift. But that's a whole other fucking rabbit hole I could go down. And when I tie that into the cigar room, there are elements that I brought to it that at times I was like, maybe we're not ready for that, because I dig into trauma. I like talking about how impactful that is on our brains, how impactful that is on our lives. And so when I bring this to the guys and say, I want you to think about this, there's still that method of like, let's not take them past that threshold of comfort to where they're able to open up. We've got to keep them right there and not right here and take them open. Otherwise they shut down. But the goal in that group is to challenge those areas of their lives and make their discomfort zone larger.
Yes.
Right? Or excuse me, smaller. And that no, I said it right the first time. Fuck me. But you know what I'm saying? Like it's to expand that so that they start to be more comfortable in the discomfort and they can take that on and be real. and be honest and open. And so that's kind of the antithesis of what started to happen with the cigar room. And I'll tell you what, it's every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. I just simply send out a Zoom link. I've gotten to a point now where it's like, hey, if you want to come in and check it out, I'll give you a free run, because it's a membership at this point. But I'll give you a free run because I want to see if it's going to fit for you and if you're going to fit for us, because, you know, at some point, I want it to be a revolving door of people. You know, like if you choose to stay for 6 months, if you choose to stay the entire time we're doing it, great, that's on you. But ideally, the point is to get these guys to the spot where they're rolling and they can go on. They can start their own groups. They can start their own channels. They can start their own podcasts. And they don't necessarily need this on a consistent level. It's for the guys that are at level 1, right? For the guys that are trying to figure out where they're at in their life. And it's for any age. We've had 18 to, I think Jerry's 175, but can kick anybody's ass. Let's just put that out there, you know, but I mean, it's for every age, every dynamic.
Yeah, I was just watching Lion King. I often talk about with you, Spirit of the Father. I know last time, or a couple times ago that I was in the cigar room, I was talking about it. And to me, that's really, it's really interesting because, you know, we talk a lot about trauma from our parents, right? The scars that our parents have, carry it down to the next generation. I was just watching Lion King, and it's like, bro, it's like, it's so powerful if you like look at it from the psychological perspective that scars this scarred person, right? And he's naturally scarring everyone else around him. But there's very few that they're the Mufasa, right? Because they recognize that strength within them. And the scar represents men who haven't recognized that within them. So what they do is they scar everyone else around them, right? Through manipulation and that, you know, egoic mind. And, you know, I was watching it, and from the lens of, because I listened a lot to Jordan Peterson and how he breaks it down. And I wanted to add to it because it's like there's a point in the movie where he's like hanging out with Timon and Pumbaa. It's like he's hanging out with his buddies, getting drunk. That's how I look at it. He's like, yeah, Hakuna Matata, you know, there's no worries. Like this is like the liberal mentality, right? That you know, I think we all go through at some point. But then he gets called. He has that call, and he's like, well, where's my father? I need someone else to lead me. I don't have my father, and he's living with the guilt because he thought that, you know, he was under the impression that he killed his father. Right. And it was Rafiki who pointed him back within. And it's like he lives within you. Right. And I think this is really a Christian deep idea. So, you know, we talked a little bit about faith last time. I wanted to talk about it again. Maybe some fresh ideas pop up. What role does faith play in men's life? You know, the Father within, God the Father, which I look at as the archetype of men. What is it to be the pinnacle of a man? What makes a strong man in the real sense? What role does faith have in your life and being a strong man and leading others to be that?
Yeah, so faith is it's a powerful tool in our tool belt when it's used correctly. We just spoke last weekend on faith in the cigar room, because I myself, I hold Christian beliefs. My faith is tied to the Christian doctrine. But one of the things that comes out from that is that every day, regardless of what your belief system is, if you believe that somebody put all of this together, if you believe that we just came crashing together and all these molecules and now here we are, it's fine, but you're practicing faith every day. You are practicing some form of faith every day. So these people that denounce faith and say that, you know, for me to have faith in the Christian doctrine, it makes me some kind of ignorant. It's kind of silly, because I'm like, well, you're doing the same thing. You know, if you believe that nothing was, you know, nothing came from something, in a way, that's kind of the same thing as my Christian belief. If you believe that we've evolved from monkeys, you're putting faith into that belief system. So you're diving into some faith, because what faith is to me is believing in something that you have reason to believe in. It's up to each one of us to decide what those reasons are for that belief system, right? The other side of that too is that when I look at faith, I can make it as simple as, you know, you've started Life Talk. I started Navigating the Intentional Life in the blog, and I'm, you know, we're both putting content on social media with an end goal in mind, or a milestone in mind that we're trying to reach. We start the work, right? We put it out here. We're doing this podcast this morning. It doesn't mean that it's going to go anywhere. It doesn't mean that 5 years from now that we're making money from what we're doing. but we do the work. Why? Because we have faith that this work is going to get us and move us further down the line to where at some point we are doing this for a living. We are doing this in a way that is impacting. I'll make it even simpler and even more fruitful. And that is it saving somebody in the moment that they're in.
Yeah.
They hear this, they go, faith is something that I've struggled with, or belief in myself is something that I struggle with, which again is another form of faith. I have faith that I can put a message out that somebody's going to grab onto, and it's going to change something for them. It's going to give them the fuel, the spark to their fire to carry forward and to make a change. That's faith. What we're doing right now is faith driven. We're believing that by doing this, we're going to move the ball down the field. And so I think there's a very skewed, especially when, again, I go back to Christian doctrine. I grew up in the church. I joked last week and I was like, I'm like the worst for some people. I'm like the worst Christian possible, because not only am I a single, or, not only am I a white male, but I grew up Southern Baptist, right? You throw Southern in front of anything, unless it's hospitality, they think you're a bigot and a racist. And not only that, it's like, oh, you were Southern Baptist. So like you didn't dance, you didn't, get anywhere near a girl. Like they confuse it. And it's really off-putting in certain sectors, specifically when I was out on the East Coast, no offense, but it was weird with how people saw it. And so like I've lived with that my whole life. But I can tell you the moments that I've had in my life, whether it's real or not, we won't know until we die. But I can say my faith has allowed me things that I go, I don't know how that happened. I don't know where that came from. It's too much for coincidence, right? There's just too much there for coincidence. And life is hard enough as is. Right? Life's going to kick you in the dick daily if you let it. And with faith, it's like, why not have this belief that if I believe in something strongly enough and I follow a set and a code and I treat people within that same thing and it's for the good, what's wrong with that? Why is that so wrong? I mean, we're in a society today where it's like, don't you dare identify me in any way, shape, or form. That's my truth is my truth. It doesn't matter what reality says.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Let's go into that, because that's something that I get into with some people, is that, the difference between a subjective truth and an objective truth, right? The subjective truth, I think that there's certain things that can be subjective, right? Like I may like vanilla, you might like chocolate. We can still live in a world where we like these different things. So we're different. I don't want to be in a world where there's a bunch of me's. We beat each other up. But I think the problem becomes, what is the objective truth, right? And I think the objective truth goes to the moral framework. And to the extent that the moral framework is inner realized, because if my framework is, it's a dog eat dog world out there, and I live in that, then everybody's my enemy, right? So it's not stable. I'll make everybody else my enemy. But it's like, as we dive into that, and I think that's part of faith too. But I think that's something we've lost in our culture, is this idea of an objective truth. So it's almost like everybody's pushing the line, right? It's almost like a bunch of kids pushing dad's boundaries, right? To try to figure out what is the right way and what is the wrong way. And there's not enough people saying this is the right way. And I say it with conviction, right? Not to shame people, not to put other people down, but because I really internally realize it. What are your thoughts on that? As far as subjective, objective reality, because once you say this is the truth, this is right, and this is wrong, you better be rooted in something, because it takes balls to say that.
I think people have forgotten that it's okay to disagree. It's okay to be different. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that we need to fight. It doesn't mean that you should have less than me or I you. It just means that we have a different view of life. And it will always be that way, no matter how hard people fight it, no matter how hard, liberals or the right or, whatever you want to tag it as, we are always going to have an internal struggle, because we are tribal by nature. You're going to look for the people that remind you of you, that fit a certain value set in your head. and you are going to gravitate to that tribe. And that's what that's going to become. We are tribal by nature. And then each tribe is going to have its own faith. It's going to have its own belief systems, and oftentimes what happened with that is, well, these tribes are going to cross paths and we're going to war, right? Back in the day, that's what it was. Now it's, don't you dare say anything that's going to offend me that goes against my tribe, because we should all be this really, it's like the melting pot concept of America has become so skewed that we believe that we all have to be gelled together in this one. Like, I've got to believe that it's okay for my kids to get a story read to them by a dude dressed in drag pretending to be a woman. He was born with a dick, but he denies his dick. So he's no longer a woman. I've got to respect that. I don't have to respect shit. I don't care if you have a penis, a vagina, a fucking unicorn horn coming out of your forehead. If you're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit. And I don't need to have anything to do with you. If you're not going to, like at the end of the day, these value systems, when we talk about faith, even you go, well, are you going to be kind? Are you going to give love and compassion? So, in that, I take it a step further to say, the downfall for me with so many things started probably 20 years ago when we started doing these no score leagues and everybody gets a trophy, and, acting like we as children were so fragile, we couldn't handle wins and losses. And how backwards is that thinking? I believe we're seeing it now. And these people are like, oh my God, you don't believe what I believe? You think abortion is wrong? Like, oh shit, I can't handle it. My head's going to fucking explode because my whole life I've not been challenged, and the challenges have been taken away from me because I couldn't handle it. And now I'm an adult, and guess what? When it matters the most, I can't fucking handle it. But now I'm dangerous. Now I can fucking vote. Now I can step into these jobs, into these colleges, and spew my rhetoric with no basis other than my feelings.
My feelings, yeah. That's a really good point, because I put out a video not too long ago, because this was like a hurdle for me. We talked about it on the space, the space that we did. And I recommend people to follow you on Twitter, Justin Copeland. His name obviously will be here. But we were talking about feelings, and, in the last video that we did, we talked about, it's important, I think, and you spoke about it in this video as well. And I agree, right? I think it's healthy for a man to cry if you're holding on all that. The question becomes, what is the root motivation? Is the root motivation to seek attention and just validation and, get the mommy's love? Or is the motivation to overcome it so you can stand and you feel your feelings fully in the future, but you don't avoid them and you don't harbor them and suppress them? And it got me to a point where I was thinking, I think there's two types of emotions, right? Because what I define as happiness is fleeting. What I define as joy is the same thing for me and you. You might see joy when you see your kids excelling. I might see joy. I don't have kids right now, but I see my dog, and it's joy. I joy when I see life, right? Happiness, I might, like I said, I might have ice cream. I'm happy. I'm feeling good, right? But joy is different than happiness. And the reason I'm bringing up, I think there's two types of feelings. There's flow feelings. When we are who we are, we're rooted in our own strength. Mm-hmm. And then there's feelings of, let's say, immature. I don't feel like working out. I don't feel like doing this today, so I'm not going to do it. And I think that's bled into, the point that you're making. It's like, it's all about feelings. So I think this is something that's really interesting. As you get up, I think as you grow in faith and truth, I see so many paradoxes, because you could say fuck your feelings, and the next moment you could say your feelings are important, and they're both right.
Yeah, no, and all of that is in the context that you use it, right? It's, when you start talking about happiness, I always giggle when people are like, I just want to be happy. And I have this, I'm a brash person, perverse mind sometimes, but I always equate happiness as life's orgasms, right? Because they don't last. It's a brief, like you said, fleeting is a great way to put it.
I put that on Twitter. Tag your name in that. That's awesome.
Do it. It is. It's
and it feels good, right? You can't deny it. Feels
great, but you can't sustain that. You cannot sustain that feeling over even a long frame of time, right? I mean, even on vacation in the most beautiful spots in the world, that's going to ebb and flow. And so what I always look at is like joy is an interesting word to use. I've actually not had enough time to think about how would I incorporate joy married to happiness, married to being content, right? Because I look at that and I go, am I content? And what I fill my life with is what I'm looking for to have that contentment, so that it then breeds more of those moments of life's orgasms, right? Like that's it for me. And man, that's something that's so equatable to your relationship with your girlfriend. Like you're looking for that. Can I create the moments where we have those high ebbs, and those flows where it is happy, right? And so that's a paradox to life in general. And I think, there's a lot of misinformation as far as what we're supposed to do. I mean, I think it's always, I giggle too when people bring up Disney movies. You brought up Lion King, and
I love that movie, bro. It's so good. We just watched it the other day.
I'm an older man than you, so I was like, I think in 4th grade when that movie came out. And I'm telling you right now, like if you don't cry, if you don't tear up when Mufasa dies,
bro,
there's something seriously fucking broken in you, and you need to go seek professional help immediately. But I look at that time frame and I'm like, look at what Disney was doing, man. Like from the 70s to the late 90s, it was like, hey kids, guess what? Here's life for you. Your parents are going to die horrifically. You're going to be on your own, and you're going to have to figure out and find your new tribe, even though your parents didn't stick around long enough to give you that foundation. And occasionally you're going to see them, which is actually just you remembering them. And you've got to figure out life now. But guess what? You're going to have fun doing it. You're going to meet the Timon and Pumbas. You're going to meet the Rafikis of your life, and they're going to help you along the way because your parents are gone. Right. And I mean, they're just kicking us in the face from an early age on. Bambi, like all that. Look what they were doing to girls. Like, hey, girls, like Cinderella, you're going to find this guy and he's going to be so in love with you. Yeah. He will do everything in his power to find you and marry you and wed you. And you're going to live happily ever after. I mean, that was at the end of a lot of those movies, Cinderella, Snow White. And I'm not trying to go into a movie critique, but that's been a big part of my life. So you brought that movie up. So fuck you. Here we go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I look at that and it's like, it was a system in some ways of failure. Like I always say, like, I don't want a Cinderella romance. Right. I look at it and go, no, this was so misleading. Like Snow White, I'm not going to be some charming prince that's going to be able to kiss you on the forehead and your life is magically changed. You're going to have to be on board with me. You're going to have to work with me. And there are going to be times when we really probably dislike each other a lot. And we're going to have to figure out how to work through that and not bring other people into the mix and stay faithful to this thing that we started out with. But I think today, when we go back to happiness and where this all ties in, where I was going with this is we're so caught up in, does it make me feel happy? Are my feelings right? If they're not, that person's got to go. It must be wrong because I'm not happy all the time. It's not perfect all the time. And I think that's why you see these relationships, these dudes and these women suffering. I mean, guys are 3 times more likely to be alcoholics than women. There's a reason for that. There's a set reason for that.
I want to share this with you because I've shared this with a couple other guests. We go into a little bit more. If you see that?
Oh shit!
You see it?
I do.
Yeah. So can you read it? I don't know if you can read it.
I can. Yeah.
So this is from David Hawkins, and it's a scale of consciousness. And I've always reflected on this. And you see down here is force, right? All these are force emotions. And up here is power. And this is where I got the joy from. So I can't, I'm stealing it off this.
That's all right.
But once you enter power, and this is where I see, Zach Small and Anthony McLarino, peaceful parenting, right? It's you get into power, and power is different from force. This is why people, you want to get a girl, you can't force her to like you, right? You have to be in power. These feelings of reason, acceptance, courage. People who are courage, they have courage to be themselves, all that. But going into the happiness thing, happiness, as you said, it's the orgasm, right? It's desire and craving. And joy it's you're complete within yourself. You be yourself, right? And these are just 2 different. I just wanted to share this because I really thought it was interesting. But as you're more here, guilt and shame is the worst, right? And this is how you see life view. Your life view is cool. On the top one, it is what it is. It's one of the most powerful statements, but just want to share this because I think it's, I look at this a lot and I just go, oh, it makes sense. And the difference to get to pride to power is you have to have courage, right?
Mhm.
And the entryway to power is that courage may be like, wow, I have a lot of aspects of force to let go of. I have a lot of shame. I have a lot of guilt. I have guilt because I did this, and this, apathy, all these different emotions.
Yeah, no, and that's when I look at a chart like this. I mean, one, you're gonna have to send that to me because I do enjoy these breakdowns, right? And how
Yeah.
people view all these different, I mean, these are all emotions, right? All of this is emotion based. But how that is broken down, and then how one can utilize these things, because everybody has desire, everybody has anger, everybody has fear, everybody has apathy, guilt, shame. But it's what you do with it, how you let it manifest in you. Before the podcast, before we started recording, I was sharing a story about some people in my life that I'm close to, that extremely close to, that for years they have been so good about disguising their fear as practicality. And that's a very powerful thing in a way that it has crippled them from doing.
Disguising their fear as practicality, meaning like just, oh, that's what everyone else does, or it's
Well,
not like what is that?
it's reasoning your way out of a risk, right?
Mm.
When you start to look at taking a calculated risk, you can talk yourself out of anything and into anything. It just depends on where you want your mind to go with it. And, we were talking about, that was kind of the antithesis of why I started navigating the intentional life, was that mindset, and why some people go, no, I see the milestone, I see the marker, I see these positives, where others, these people that I'm talking about that I'm close to, and so many more, they go, well, but if I do this, then this might happen. And then if that happens, then I'm going to lose this. And if I lose this, then I'm going to fall away from this. And it changes everything. And I'm not ready to take that. And I think we often get in this conversation that I stay away from it now, because it's just so clear to me. It doesn't make sense to talk about it. But you hear that cliche question all the time asked, like, are you afraid of failure, or are you afraid of success? And I go, you're afraid of fucking both. It's both. It's not one or the other. It's not driven by one, right? I think in a way you go, you've been doing this podcast for a bit now, and you've had your ebbs and flows with it. You've had your ups and downs where you've liked it, you've hated doing it. And I've had the same. I think anybody that puts themselves into something, they'll know what we're talking about when we say this, that it's not peachy keen. It's not rosy all the time. When you start to pursue your passion, you never.
Bro, you're making a podcast? Why? It's not going to be successful. What do you think? You're going to be Joe Rogan?
But that's anything and everyone,
Yeah.
Like anytime you step out, no matter what it is, somebody's going to go, mm-mm. And it's typically the people closest to you. Right.
Yeah. Which is a reflection. It's interesting. I've thought about this. It's a reflection of their view, right? Because how would they do it
of
if
themselves.
they can't do it? Correct.
It's a review of themselves.
And I had a little bit of resentment for people who really didn't believe in it. But the second was that resentment was dropped, because it's like, well, I'm not successful yet. So it's almost like it's a good poke. It's a good poke to say, well, you're not doing it, right? So it's almost like I expect it at that point, right? It's like, well, it's not. So until you do it, it's like, good. It's almost like it's a competitive. It gets the competitive juices flowing, but it's also.
I think you got to tweak that the way.
Yeah, let's go.
You got to rework. You got to look at this differently, because success is a very broad word, and it's malleable to every person, right? So we easily define success as what are the dollar signs, or how many zeros are in your bank account, right? And we immediately
that's a good point. I define it as being able to make a living doing what I love doing. That's success to me, and not success in the eyes of, oh, well, I have this many followers, because then I'll need more followers. Then I'll need to make more money. And then when will it be enough? But I say successful where I'm confident in doing it and making a living doing it, so.
I think it goes to this, like, I see success in what I've done and what you're doing in the conversation that you just brought up. The fact that somebody was like, why are you doing that? To me, that's success, because I go, wait a minute, I'm doing something that makes them uncomfortable to the point where they feel like they need to project their own insecurity masked as them saying they're giving me advice like, hey, don't set yourself up for failure. It's like, no, motherfucker, I want to set myself up for failure. I live and breathe and breed and love putting myself in positions where I'm going to fucking fall on my face. Because one, I know on the other side of that is potential success. Two, I feel fucking alive whenever I'm putting myself out there and going, you know what, I'm willing to do what you're afraid of. And I'm not talking about bungee jumping and jumping out of planes and swimming with sharks. Like, fuck all that shit. That's cool. That's your thing, whatever. I mean, challenging people, because it goes back to a lot of people, they want to see you do well, but they don't want to see you do better than them.
Yeah. That's big Zach Small stuff right there. I remember his speech where he was at, I don't know if it was 21, one of the speeches with other men. And that's what he said. It says, that is such a breakthrough period where you want other people to win around you. Like you want that. Because that's the ego. That's overcoming ego.
That's a message that, somebody like Sean Whalen speaks every time. If you're not following him on Instagram and doing this, you're missing out. It's like not following Jocko Willink or not following, everyone talks about Joe Rogan, but it's one of those things where you go, when you start to really break things down and you're doing and chasing and living this passion, whatever it may be, you're not intimidated by somebody else that's doing better. Right. And you're not intimidated by the next guy up, because your mentality is like you've already established that belief system in yourself where I'm not worried about what you think of my feelings. I'm not worried about what you think of my message, because in my heart, my pillars, my foundation, my faith tells me that everything that I'm doing right now is what I should be doing. And so the next guy up or the guy in front of me is going to push me down the field because, I want to see him win and he'll have his time just like I've had mine. But that time pushes me to my next time. And all these guys that are doing these things for a living and they are providing for their families or themselves through their passion, they have that same mentality. It's the ones that don't. It's the ones that get ate up by someone saying, I don't think that's going to work for you. They're the ones that don't, they fail. They allow that to internalize and they're just not ready. And they may never be, because here is too soft.
Yeah, and the same people will tell you, I always believed in you when you're successful. It's so crazy.
Well, and that's the kind of stuff like, one of the best things I heard from somebody online came from Gary Vee. And he said, you want to know how to deal with your haters? Stop paying so much fucking attention to the ones that applaud for you. And that stuck with me, because when you're looking for that affirmation, when you're looking for somebody to say, you did a good job, Michael, job well done, little buddy, here's a good game. You fuck yourself, you're fucked. Like you're looking for something that is outside of what you're actually trying to do. And so your message is no longer as true. Your passion is no longer as true. And so when people start to challenge that, when the haters start to come in, you're going to fold.
Yeah,
absolutely going to fold. And I'll tell you this, like my favorite thing is, and I haven't posted too many controversial things. I fucking hate getting banned on the social media platforms. It annoys the fuck out of me. But it's when somebody messages me and they disagree, I tell them, thank you. And if they want to continue to have the conversation, as long as it's going somewhere where we're both learning from each other and it's respectful, okay, fine, we'll have that conversation. But if you start to be hateful and tell me I'm an idiot, I go, no, there's no need to talk anymore because I've already won. And here's why. I so got into your head with what I said. You actually took time out of your fucking day to message someone you don't know and give me your belief system, and I didn't ask for it.
Yeah, maybe Tyler Tot, I don't know if you follow him. You got a 3-page hate letter we talked about in the podcast. 3-page hate letter
for adopting a black kid.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. People are fucked up. Like I saw that too. I'm actually trying to get him on my fucking podcast. But it's just people, you'll find when you're so morally decrepit, or you're so lost because maybe you don't have a value system, maybe you don't have a faith system that you actually believe in, you're just following the stream. It's hard not to be bitter. I mean, what we do is difficult. The challenges I've taken on and decisions that I've made, it's not easy, but I fucking love it because I know I'm going in the direction that I should. And at the end of the day, we go back to Lion King. The one thing I thought about was so many people want to live like fucking Timon and Pumbaa and how Simba was, right? Like that was beautiful, right? It was funny. Some of the best parts of the movie are within that little montage of them singing Hakuna Matata.
Eating bugs.
But that's not real life.
Yeah.
It's not real life. You know, the value came into his life when he saw that there was a need for him, when he saw that there was a responsibility that whether he wanted it or not, it was there. And he could either run from it like a little baby back bitch, or he could step up and go defend his pride. And I don't think there's any accident that they were lions and a group of lions is called a fucking pride.
And bro, there's so much good in that movie, bro. Like,
is there not? Like, I never thought of. I'm not gonna lie to you. You brought this to me. You fucking slam danced it on my plate, and now I'm thinking about it in ways that I've never thought about.
Bro, I actually, this credit goes to Jordan Peterson, who got me diving into these. Because to your point, you actually made a good point too. Because there's like the Cinderella BS too, where just like, yeah, this Prince. So while on one end there's a lot of core good stuff, there's a lot of like, you know, BS Hollywood. You got to sift through it. But like Pinocchio was another one. Right, you got to please people check out Jordan Peterson's breakdown on Lion King and Pinocchio. Pinocchio, it's like he became his one wish was his father was for him to become a real boy, not being pulled by his string. It's so powerful when you really listen to that way he breaks it down. And what does he do? He sells out. He becomes like in the Hollywood of the movie, right? And he's like a puppet. And there's a lot of people paying, but he's a puppet. He has no autonomy. And he goes back home, and his father's not there. When he realizes what he's become, his father's not there. Jiminy Cricket, Jesus Christ, right? Yeah. Like it's his conscience, and he's not listening to this small voice. But yeah, but he goes back and he ends up going to the darkest place, which is the belly of a whale, and he finds his father there in the darkest place. He doesn't want to look, and that's what makes him become a real boy. He goes through that. Right. And that's a lot of the stuff that we talk about, is that we don't want to go to that dark place. Same thing with Timon and Pumbaa. It hurts, and he's living on the pain that he killed his father, because Scar told him that you killed your father. So he believed that, and I think there's a lot of principles. This is why, to believe in Christ is to realize that he died for our sins on that cross. He saw through the ripple of time how we end up becoming our own worst enemies, and he died for every single sin. And it's our responsibility to believe that. And when we believe that, we can overcome anything. And it sounds so simple, and it's so funny. 10 years ago, I said to myself, I'd be like, sounds nice, Mike, believe in Christ, right? Do you you have to be hungry to understand what that even means. And I have work to do on my inner self to really believe. Because do you believe? Because faith comes down to everything. You broke it down before too. It's like faith to put together a podcast that it's going to connect with other. I don't know how it's going to work out, but I met you. But I met you because I reached out to George Bruno. That's how this all started. Reached out to George Bruno. I followed him for a bunch of time. Elliot Hulse was another one. And I reached out to Elliot Hulse. I didn't hear back. It's fine. I don't, people are busy. I just kept doing it. I kept reaching out. George Bruno. It's like, yeah, I'll do one with you. He goes, you should reach out to Zach Small. Reach out to Zach Small. That's how I met you. So that's how we're having this conversation. Who else am I going to meet? And just keep doing it and not knowing how it's going to play out. But
and that goes back to what we were talking about before we started recording is, and I'm sitting here wondering what the hell you're going to title this podcast with all the
Lion King
about faith and Disney. Like, just call it Hakuna Matata. But it's interesting because when you start. And again, this was the foundation behind navigating the intentional life was, when you put yourself out there and you get going, it's amazing what doors open up. It's amazing what relationships begin to unfold, like what you're talking about. I never thought that this would be where it took me. I mean, in my mind, when I was imagining, when I was really thinking like, this is what I want to do. And so I'm game planning of how I want to get there. At no point did I think, well, one of my very close friends now lives in fucking South Africa. And if I hadn't been doing this, I wouldn't even know he fucking exists, and vice versa. And in that time frame, it's a guy from the cigar room, Redmond Lowe. Dude is spectacular. His faith is strong. Everything that he does, he lives and breathes in that faith. and he believes that what he's doing is what Christ has called him to do. And look, whether you believe or not, you can't take away facts. Since he joined the cigar room, since he started sharing his faith, since he started sharing his story, he has since moved on to what is essentially his dream job. And it all happened in the span of about 4 months. And I will say, and he'll give credit to the fact that he was able to start having conversations with guys like myself, the guys that have been in the cigar room, you know, some of the people that we've had in that drop in every now and again. I mean, they live their life in a way that it moves other people. And Redmond has been a benefactor of that, but also he's just stepped up and said, this is what I'm going to do. And again, it comes back to back in December when I saw him on wearing an Arsenal kit. I didn't know what this guy was going to do. You know, there's several guys that are still in it now that I thought, man, they're going to fall off. There's something very deep going on with them. And there is, and there was, but here they are. And in that time frame, their lives have changed drastically. Because of nothing else, they found faith in themselves. And now these doors are opening up for them. And that's where, for me, I go back to when I started this, I didn't know that I was going to be running a men's group with a title that, like, I don't even fucking smoke cigars. Right. And so I get these questions like, man, I don't like, do I have to? Like, dude, I don't. It's just a name, right? One I didn't come up with. So, you know, it's crazy. And that's,
yeah, it's so big too for people who are trying to start out. I made Life Talks. I just made a name. Life Talks. I'm like, all right, it sounds kind of Life Talks. Bam. Because people will make excuses, right? Oh, what should my podcast be called? What should my dream be called? Just make it.
They get tied down in that stuff, man.
Just make it your name. Michael Bacchioni Podcast. And then you can change it down the line. So, you know, that's so funny to hear that. Cigar room. I don't even smoke a cigar, right? Yeah. So it's like.
But it resonates. It's the concept. It's everything that I look at in what we do with the cigar room, what I do in Navigating the Intentional Life, the 57, which is a group that was initially what I had planned to start. And now the cigar room has kind of stepped in with that, but the 57 is on its way. It's a mentality, right? So the 57, it comes from, there's 43% of American homes that are fatherless. The other side of that percentage is 57. Ideally, that 43% of fatherless homes, that number is going to drop, which means the number of homes with fathers in them gets higher. So that 57 shouldn't be a set number, and it won't be. But it's not about the number, it's about the mentality. And that was something when I looked at it, I go, well, that's a passion that I have, because I am a single dad. And single in the sense of I am by myself. I do not have somebody else in the home with me right now that can help me on those nights where it's difficult, that can help me on those nights where I'm trying to make dinner, plus help them with homework, plus get them ready for their sporting events and all the things that comes with parenting, right? I'm by myself. And there are a bunch of guys out there that are either like that, or they're actually trying to figure out how to get that, because they're in this shit situation where the woman is going to get the favor right out of the gate just because she, you know, and I get into this, and this is a hot topic, but I'm gonna say it anyway, because I don't give a shit. It's like, I didn't choose to be a man. I wasn't like standing in line one day going, oh, do I want to get in the man line or I want to get in the woman line? Because if I get in the woman line, I can carry another life form in my body. So that makes me some kind of fucking martyr because I made that choice and not going to be a man. Nobody chose their fucking gender. I mean, now they are, right? They're just checking a box like, no, I was a dude. I have a penis, but I'm going to pretend I don't. But that doesn't make anything special, in my opinion, because there's not one without the other. And that mindset, now I'm going down a rabbit hole. I kind of forgot where I was going with it, but you know, it's that victimism. Like it's that we want to point fingers at other things. And so these men are getting lambasted because women can carry life in their bodies. So they automatically get favor over it because they have a vagina and a uterus. And these guys don't know how to fight it, or they're scared to fight it, or they're afraid to step up and go, well, if I play nice, I'll get to see my kids.
Yeah, it's the ability. It's the ability to confront. That's been a really powerful word for me, is the ability to confront, right? Because what media, society wants to divide us, men versus women. To me, I think, you know, to confront is to say, this is what I expect. Because a man needs to be selfish and selfless. He needs to say, this is what I want, This is what I need. This is what will make me feel like a man. And this is what I will do to provide. And I think that's the key that's missing, right? You want, the right wife in your life. You want a woman to really be there for you. Be there in ways where you're shining, like where it's naturally she's going to come at you versus this is what I expect. I want. No. Give. You don't even have to say I want. And the people who aren't giving back to you, when you are honest with yourself, where you're truly giving, now look what you're doing, right? You're raising kids, you have a job, and you're starting your podcast, and you're growing Cigar Room. This ties into Timon and Pumbaa again, right? It is going to that place where you are saying, I'm going to take on responsibility. It's not fun to do that because now you're in the arena. And you're going to have to deal with like the Karens saying, well, why are you doing that? Well, my body, my choice. Men can be, you think for people watching, because I know in my heart, we're the same at our core. You think we want to do that? But it's like, it's not fun to do that. But you know what? Every single time we have these conversations, we get to the core of, it's not me against you. It's not men against women. To me, it's right against wrong. And it's not fun to be that, like, because going back to the original word, the ability to confront is different than fighting. If I fight somebody, I'm making the other person wrong. If I'm confronting, I'm saying, hey, putting my balls on the line here because I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to bring us together, right? Mm-hmm. Blessed are the peacemakers. I want peace, real peace. And real peace comes from the ability to be disciplined, the nature aspect. Life is going to punch you in the face. You have to be disciplined because you don't know how you're going to deal with that. So you know what? Get up and work out. Wake up at the same time. Be there for other people. Be proactive. And the other side is nurture. You're not always going to be on top of your game. You're going to have to lean on other people. And that's the ability to confront. So you deal with the Karens. It's not fun to do that. It's not fun to be the first person at work to say, hey, you know what? We're kind of not working to the best of our ability. It's not fun to be the person in relationships to say that thing that's in the closet. Right. I feel this way. And this is, I have to, it's taking ownership and responsibility. It's not fun to do that. But as you expand your responsibility, like Simba didn't have to go back to Brad Rock. He did it because he took his place in the circle of life. And look what happened out of that. It just takes the power of one person to take it. And it's not fun, but is it worth it? I say so. Why else are you here?
Yeah, and there's so much good in that anybody that's watching and listening, I mean, I hope that the right points are caught, right? Because the first one is, you said it's not fun. And to me, what I hear in that, I go back to people have that old cliche of, when you go after what you're passionate about, you never work another day in your life. That is so fucking misleading. That is so fucking wrong. It's why people, they get discouraged, they burn out and they stop because they think, well, wait a minute, I hate this today. I don't want to do this today. Okay, well, that means this is not my thing yet, then. I haven't found that thing. It's like, no, motherfucker, when you start to do what you're passionate about, you're going to work harder and more, and you're going to be more discouraged, and your highs are going to be higher, your lows are going to be lower than anything else in your life because you fucking poured yourself into it. So don't believe that, it's happily ever after bullshit, going back to Disney. Like, it's not. It's going to suck. It's going to be hard.
With the hyenas.
It's not going to be
it's not going
to be fun, which nowadays we can say the hyenas were the Karens. But, and they look like Karens. But
anyway, Whoopi Goldberg is one of the hyenas, and she's in The View. Like, bro, like, you can't make this up.
God incidents. It's fucking God incidents, as some Redmond said, or Caleb said to me. But anyway, and then the other side of that too is, we talk a lot about men and women, and it's not supposed to be this power struggle. But when I look at men nowadays and guys like Tanner Guzzi and Jack Donovan and even Jordan Peterson, when they start to look at the nature of man today, the state of man, it's like, you're fucking telling me you're surprised that your wife is not interested in you. You're fucking wearing Crocs. You've got fucking cargo shorts on. You got stains on your fucking V-neck white shirt and your belly hangs over your penis. Like, are you serious right now? And you're going to go, oh, well, but I'm working 80 hours a week and I'm bringing this lifestyle. It's like, dude,
I hear that so much, and then I see guys like you, people in FOE, they're working out and they have kids and they have responsibilities. They have their job and they show up and they have a podcast. What's your excuse? And not because it's not that it's like a dick swinging contest, right? Like, oh, I do this, and this, but it's like, they find the time because they cut out the Netflix, they cut out the endless scrolling. They made, as your word, which I've been really reflecting on this word more intentional, right? Because it's like, I think it's because I think of that word, I break down that word, intention is inner tension. And I think that if there's always intention, it's not life. In other words, if you're always intentional about everything, right? Like, but I think that's the starting point. You have to be intentional. This is what I want. And this is how I break it down the best way I can describe what I'm saying. It's Michael Jordan. He had to be intentional with every single time he was dribbling, right? He had to intentionally drill every single day. He had to miss shots. He had to be intentional. But at a certain point, he got into his flow. He was no longer intentional. He was he was in flow state. You don't get to flow state, which I think is our highest state, where everything just works out in our nature unless we build that foundation. And that's the foundation of intentional living. It's a great word.
Yeah. And I'm never going to get away from it either, but, that's where so many guys miss it. You bring up FOE. It's the same thing with the guys in the cigar room of going, what are you doing today that's challenging your tomorrow? What are you doing today that makes tomorrow better? Right. And that's that intentional aspect. Like today, if I'm living for tomorrow to be better, and I'm not talking a year from now, I'm not talking 5 years from now, I'm talking about literally within 24 hours. Did what I do today make tomorrow just even 1% better? And that's now become a cliche percentage that you see all the time now in the echo chamber of just do 1% today. And by the end of the year, you'll like, fuck you, do the best you can today. And if you do 5%, 100%, fucking fantastic. If it's only 0.5%, great. As long as you're doing something that is going to make your tomorrow better, then you will start to rack up those wins. And that's applicable to, again, men and women in these relationships. I mean, it just blows my mind because we talk about the ebbs and flows or the give and take of a relationship with a woman. I don't care what these armpit having, green hair dyed fucking Karens say. At the end of the day, a woman wants to know, you ask a woman, like, what's your favorite body part of mine? Right. And you're like, well, Justin, where are you going with this? A lot of them will say your shoulders or your arms. Like if you work out, right? I can't imagine being some fat titty, having, dude that's out of shape. I'm like, what do you like about me? Well, I love the fact that you can put a beer can on your stomach and it stays put. But, they'll say like, I like your shoulders. Why do they say that? Why is that a common answer? Because in those shoulders, like, what can you carry? How can you protect me? Right? How can you protect me? And in turn, how can you provide for me? Women want that, just like men want to be cared for as well. So to me, I just put a tweet up the other day about a complacent man is a cancer to any relationship. And that if you're sitting there and you're half-assing your life, don't expect your wife or your spouse to whole ass in the bedroom or in any other area of the life because you're not providing.
This came to me and I got to dive into this idea. It's so funny to say that because that's why I say like our hearts are in the same place. To me, what makes an alpha, right, and hear me out, the full thing on here. Real men want a submissive woman. The way to get a submissive woman is for the man to be submissive to something greater than himself. The more he is submissive to his ideal, the more he'll find that real submissive woman. Not because he's a tough guy. You're going to do what I say. You're going to be submissive today. No. It'll be natural. That's the order of how it is. The more I am submissive, meaning when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. To the extent that is in my being, that's me being submissive to my moral compass or to God, if you want to put it that way, right? The more a man obeys God, the more he'll find people obey him. But the more that he doesn't obey God, his code, the more he is not integrated, the more that he is not in that, he's going to not have people follow him. So because we all want to be followed on a certain sense, right? That's why we're building our podcast. We want people to follow us, but to just have people follow us, no, we don't want to have. It's like Peter Pan. He has this is another Jordan Peterson. If we're going all Disney today, bro.
What's happening, dude? Like, I didn't know I was doing a fucking Disney movie review.
Because I've been really being a lot more conscious on the movies that I watch and like diving in. I can't just look at. I want to understand things behind it. But Peter Pan is the boy who could be anything, right? So And Peter Pan has all of his followers. It's the Lost Boys in that movie. And, you know, that's what I think about. It's like you're following I want my following to be those who are submissive to the truth, because then the people that follow them are real. So, but that's something that I thought about, too. It's like, how do I get a woman to do what I want? Do what you think is right, and you'll find the right woman, kind of thing. And you had a similar. I want to maybe close out on this Twitter post you have here, because follow him, Justin Copeland, on Twitter, guys. Single dads, you're looking for the woman that challenges you as a man, not in a nagging, stressful way. The kind of woman that makes you find the best version of you, not for her, but because you need this and she sees it. Ultimately, this is to the benefit of you both. A woman that challenges you as a man. So if your woman is not, she's stressing you out, you're not focused on your ideal to the extent that, because a woman she's not going to push back if you're being the best version of yourself. Woman only gives you shit if you're weak in some spot, and she wants you to be, so she's going to challenge you unconsciously.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic. I mean, there's these really, really small but massive dynamics that take place between men and women. And one of those is the mother-son aspect. And so as a guy, if you're not, we talk about submissive women, and a lot of women recoil in horror when a man uses the word submissive, especially in front of wife. It's that these guys aren't follling their
But
path.
look at 50 Shades of Grey. That was the biggest, bro. 150 million copies sold.
That's again.
That's the next podcast.
You can't argue this independence when you're loving yourself over a torture.
That men don't know how to be alpha.
But it is that truth in what you're saying of when you're a dude that steps up and you follow this path and you go, look, part of me being a man to you is that I am going to bust my ass to be the best version of myself, whether it's in the gym, whether it's the books I read, whether it's spiritually, whether it's the passions that I pursue. Now, when you're doing what's right, that woman is already going to have been lined up into that, right? Like, you're not going to find I guess it happens, but like ideally when you're where you're supposed to be, you're going to attract that person that is going to understand what it is that you are about. And because you guys share these common interests. I can tell you, the woman that one day will probably be somebody that I marry will be, that there's these passions and these interests there that are parallel. They're not exactly the same. Don't want it to be, but they're parallel. And so in times when I'm suffering, when I'm not believing enough in myself, she's there to remind me. And so when I look at like the posts that I put on Twitter, it's like, dude, if you're not doing that and she's having to tell you to take out the trash, and she's having to tell you like, hey, I need you to make the bed, or hey, I need you to go do this, or this. Well, now she's starting to view you as somebody that she has to mother. And you in turn are starting to view her as a mother.
Yep.
And now there's this resentment happening because at the end of the day, she wants you to provide, protect, right? And that's where alpha is something that women love so much, because an alpha is going to be one of those people that are like, hey, either get on board or don't. If you don't, see you later. And if something comes up, guess what? I'm going to be stepping in front of you because I'm not going to allow anything to get to you. Right. And in turn, that provision, that's not just monetarily, it's not just physically. These guys that talk about working 80 days a week, I'm like, well, where's your time for your wife?
Yeah.
Where's your time for your family? Women are very emotionally driven. That's not a knock to them, but you look at when there's affairs in a relationship, a woman typically cheats when there's something missing drastically emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you can't figure that out as a dude, I mean, you're going to struggle. But that post in and of itself is like, that woman should be challenging you in the way of, hey, you've got a mission. Let me guide you. Let me support you. Let me love you. Let me care for you in the sense when you need it. I'm going to be here to fucking hold you, to tell you, hey, get your shit straight, right? Hey, stop doubting yourself, and push you and remind you of what it is you're doing. That is a strong woman. And that is also a submissive woman. Because that's the difference. Like, people look at the word submissive, and if it's a guy going, if I tell you to do this, you better do it. That's fucking wrong. Go fuck yourself, dude. But submissive to me is actually supportive in those moments where a guy is submissive to his wife as well. When you should want a wife you should want a spouse that's going to chase her passions as well. Right? Like, why are you going to chase your passions and then want to tie up to somebody that's afraid to do the same? You know what I mean? And I think that's where that word submissive gets kind of misplaced too often. And that it's like,
well, I want to push back on that a little bit. Because I think that, and I think you'd be in agreement. I think because there's a competition idea being pushed, right? That men should work and women should work as much as men, and it's become a competition instead of cooperation. So I think it comes down to your word, right? It's intentional. I think it's important to have a blueprint and be intentional. What do you want? And if you're going to raise a family, I don't know if men and women should be working as hard, this isn't a one size fits all. I'm not saying that, I think there should be something, Pat, you don't want to be the tyrannical father, right? Where you're like, oh, you're going to stay in the kitchen for the rest of your life. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that I think there's a pushback where it's just like women are taking on men's roles, right? And we're normalizing this. And I think that I've really played around with the idea of polarity, right? The idea is that the more attractive, the more that there's that polarity, that natural polarity, not machismo, and she's watching the Housewives, and it's like now she's like, actually that polarity that you have a more powerful bond. It's like a magnet, right? Like, and I can't fake that magnet. As Zach says, you can't fake when you're around somebody. Right? If I shake your hand, you're gonna know if I'm real or not in that moment. My eye contact, my demeanor, I can't fake that. So I think that the more a man is in his polarity, when he's around other men who are focused on that polarity, I think that's where it comes in. What are your thoughts as far as that?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, it's going to be different for everybody. Like what I was saying is in the same vein of what you're saying as far as relationships go. A man and woman, when they come together, you have to make these decisions on what works best for you and your family, especially when you start adding kids into the mix. There's a whole new set of things to look at that point. I was going to say challenges, but there are these things that you now have to decide, how are we going to handle this and what makes sense to our family value system and what we're going to do. I agree with you. I don't think that the woman should have to work as much as the man. I don't think that, there should be that standard set. Now, again, at the end of the day, if there's something that she wants to do that she's passionate about, I don't feel that I'm being a man to her if I'm saying, no, really need you to be at home, really need you to just push that aside, please, because I'm doing this and I'm providing you everything financially in the home and all that. So what do you have to complain about? Be quiet, take care of the kids. No, I'm not going to do that. And I'm not saying that's what you're suggesting, but
yeah,
if she wants to take something on that's powerful to her, well, I'm going to support that. And we're going to have a conversation about, okay, how do we make this work? And that's relationships. That's that compromise, that compromise that you've got to make with your spouse. And it's time and time again throughout the lifetime that you spend with them. Because I think somewhere I read, it's like every 2 years we've changed, right? Like how we see things 2 years down the pipe is different. And so that's the same with passions. That's the same, like, I used to fucking love Nirvana when I was 16. I can't hardly stand it when on the radio now. And if you would have talked to me when I was 16, I was like, they're the best band ever, and fucking nuts, about it. But now I can't hardly listen to them. So we change. And so that's what makes the relationship stuff so difficult, is that what you're doing right now is going to be different in 2 years. How you see things right now is going to be different, even if it's along the same baseline in 2 years. Same thing for her, same thing for your spouse. Like, it's just that ebb and flow. We've talked a lot about ebb and flow, but it's how do you make that work? And I think there has to be that healthy respect there, right? That's where, when I go back to being submissive, like there are times when I believe that the man has to go, my job for you as a man is to go, what do I need to do for you? How do I support you now? We'll have that conversation. What do you need from me? That's providing, right? Because like ultimately you could just simply say, well, I know instantly out of the gate, she's going to want me to make money, and a lot of it. And we create this image of women as they're all gold diggers. That's not the case. but like, why are we not looking at, okay, what do I need to provide for you emotionally? Right? Because again, I go back to, why do women cheat? It's typically a lack of an emotional department in some way or several. So if I can say, hey, it's your turn, or this has come up, even if I don't feel like it's your turn, what do we need to do? And that's where, to me, that submissiveness, relationships are about being submissive at the right time. It's about being the leader at the right time. It's about establishing those lines, and it's different for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I've been reflecting on a lot because yeah, I think it really does come down to communication. Why do we want to do what we want to do? Right. I think the passion, I think it's important because I think it ties into, I guess one of the reasons why I'm so curious about it is because I think the families, to your point before, the 57%, right, of father, I think people have to be clear in their foundation of where they want their relationship to go. And to your point also, which it makes it more complex, is that every 2 years people are changing what they want. So I think constant communication of what do we want, because I think it becomes, and Jordan Peterson talks about this as well. There's a lot of women who, they put their careers first. And I think that ends up, when you have two parents putting their careers first, and I think this bleeds more into, it's almost like outwork, getting to this point where you're working 80 hours and then your wife's working 80 hours and you have all this money to provide, and it becomes, why are we doing what we're doing? So I think it's the responsibility. I speak for men and I speak with men. It's a responsibility of men to create that blueprint, right? And to think about what a man, for me, long term, that's what I want. I want to be in a position where I'm providing. And if my girl she wants to pursue a passion, for me, what works for me, right? And I don't want to be with a woman who doesn't want this, right? Which means that I'm not going to click with every person. I wouldn't want someone to want to feel obligated to work, right? That if
Right.
she's going to pursue something, it's coming. She ends up being her own boss. She makes her rules. She can do that versus, oh, I have to work. We have to bring in like the
Have to work to
scarcity
pay bills.
mindset.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So I think that's the problem for me, people in that sense. Right. So
Yeah.
I'm not fully articulating it, but because
No, I get it. I get it. I mean, it's one of those things where as a man, you go, is simply put, I'm the breadwinner. We accept that role. I think genetically speaking, we go, well, we're naturally built to want to solve, to want to fix, to want to fight, all of that. We want to protect. That is naturally genetic.
It doesn't take away from the family. I think that's the point. If it doesn't have to, and I'm not saying people have to.
That's the thing that people are struggling with nowadays. We want to fight the family dynamic so fucking hard. We want to fight the gender genetics so fucking hard. That's when you talk about these women that are working 80 hours a week and they're throwing themselves into the career. They are some of the most bitter bitches out there.
Yes. That's
because genetically they go, I'm going to say that I hate men. I'm going to say that men are dumb, and they put all this stupid fucking shit up on social media about how strong they are and how dumb men are. And that's kind of where movies are going nowadays, where guys are the idiots and the women are stepping in and solving all these problems. And it's like, no, look at the reality. They're bitter for a reason. Genetically, they don't want to have to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Genetically, they're meant to nurture. That's why they have the breasts. That's why I can't fucking breastfeed. They are a life source, right? And we're trying to fight that. Now, that doesn't demean women and their abilities by any stretch of the imagination, because I know if any fucking woman heard that, or the right one, your fucking inbox is going to explode and you're fucking welcome. But, it's not that. It's like, look at the facts of the sciences of who we are. So when you start saying, I don't want my wife to have to work, it's not because I want to have control over her. It's because I want to make sure that I'm doing enough where we have that choice. That's my job.
What's so interesting? This is another
family.
This is another paradox too. Again, I think as you get to the core truth, you see the paradoxes. And I was speaking about this with my girl the other day. I said to her, you want deep down in your core, they say women want everything, right? This idea, women, and I say men too, want someone who can be possessive of them and not at the same time. Mm-hmm. In other words, you're my woman. If I didn't have that mentality where you're my woman, then anybody can just talk to her. I'll be like, oh, she's not my woman, just my turn, whatever it is. But at the same time, I have to have that freedom. So you're my woman, be free. At the same time, right? That's why it's not easy. You can't do it from the mind, right? Because you're either one way or the other in the mind. It's only done in the heart, which is you're free, so free within yourself that I can boldly say you're my woman, but you're not at the same time. It's so hard to articulate that. Does that make sense?
Oh, that was perfect. That was perfectly articulated. And I think people in a healthy relationship will 100% understand exactly what you're talking about.
And I see both sides oscillating, and I just see like in the middle of that is where the power is, where I'm not thinking I'm controlling. I'm not thinking I'm saying, well, she can do whatever she wants, right? Because I think there's a lot of weak men who don't speak up. Well, I want her to be free. Well, deep down, women want to be controlled and free at the same time. And I think on a deep level, we all want that too, right? We have to be constricted by, for example, things that we don't want to do. We don't want to go to the gym. We have to force ourselves to do those things, but at the same time, we want to have that. I always say, like, there's the Hakuna Matata in me, and there's also the warrior in me, and I wouldn't give up both sides. Man, I love going out, and like you went out to the pool the other day, right? Enjoyed that, just peace, going out in nature. Like I was taking pictures of a flower the other day, bro. It's beautiful. I will never sacrifice that part of me. But you know what? The other part too, where I'm blasting rap music and rock to a hardcore workout because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Our country, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. That warrior is not, I'm going to be the warrior in the garden than the gardener in the war, right? So, but those two pieces I love, and I think they tie into I'm in control and I'm also completely not in control. Those two, Hakuna Matata.
I think that's beautiful. You articulated that 100% well. I mean, it's an amazing thing, and I'm not even going to try to step on it. I'm just going to say you put that across exactly the way people and men need to hear it, and the way women need to hear it as well. I'm just going to leave it because I want to bring up a scenario, but I just want to leave it right there because it was perfectly said.
Nice. Yeah, because I think that's why religion gets a bad rap too, because it's to explain that of the heart. Generally, that's why you have people who are like so full blown atheist or full blown Christian. I know every single verse and I'm better than you. It's much of the time, but then every time so often you come across like Jerry, man of grace. He's like, nah, man, you talk to him. He's such easy. He's such an easy man to talk to, because he's compassionate. But you know what? Check out his Twitter. He's working out every single day. He is focused on Christ being the strong man. Not this, Christ was a hippie. There was the hippie version of Christ, but there was also the man who was willing to be hated.
Dude, he was a fucking carpenter in a day where they did everything with their hands. There were no power tools. There was none of that shit. They're cutting that shit down by hand.
Never thought about that.
That dude was burly as fuck. Right? He was burly as fuck. And Jerry is somebody who's like, man, guy's practicing Krav Maga. Like that's all about breaking joints. You know what I mean? Like that's a violent martial art. And I mean, I don't want to take.
He said he's 143 years old too, man. Guys.
He actually fought Jesus ringside one time in front of the Pharisees. I don't know if you knew that story. Jerry,
I did it. Now I do.
Yeah. Ask Jerry about it when you get him on the podcast. He loves the story. He punched Jesus right in the nose. He said he was kind of a prick. Hey, listen, my God has a sense of humor. It says it in the Bible. So I can say these things. He knows I'm just bullshitting.
Sure.
Man, I've enjoyed it. I think this is a good spot for us to say, hey, we've hit some. I mean, we should
hour and a half here.
We should probably reach out to IMDb and see if they want to hear our critiques on the Disney movies. I think they're hot. I think people need to hear them. I'll reach out to my people and see what we can do there.
All right, man. Well, it's a pleasure speaking to you. Just if you could just give a brief summary, as always, where people can find you.
Yeah. So as I said, and as we've discussed, we've got the cigar room. That is, right now it's open. If you want to take part in it, it's something that you're interested in, you can find me on Instagram and message me at Justin Copeland _. And then as Michael said, I am on Twitter. You can reach out to me there. Just send me a DM. My Twitter is at Justin L. Copeland. And then also you can find the podcast on Apple and Spotify. Those are going to be the two main ones. And it's just navigating the intentional life. So you can find these conversations that I've had with a lot of dudes that come from a different background, different perspectives, guys like Michael, who's going to be on the podcast directly very soon. And we break some of these things down. And so what I always like to say, whether it's my podcast or Michael's, is if you want to, and you took something from this today, you took something from all the things that we've discussed, fucking like it, subscribe to the page and share it. It's the only way we get to continue doing what we're doing. And so if it moved you, if you think you've got a friend that needs to hear this, reach out to Michael. Michael's been a part of the Cigar Room on numerous occasions. He'll probably be on again this weekend. Reach out, DM, sit in, right? Listen to what we have to say. Listen to what some of these other guys like Jerry and the Zachs and the Drew Camps of the, the Epic Dad Code, what they have to say about life and parenting and being a man. It's all right there. So like I said, like, share, subscribe at Navigating the Intentional Life on Spotify and Apple. Same thing with Michael's Life Talks. Michael, I fucking appreciate it, man. I really enjoyed this morning.
Yeah, likewise as well. And, feel free, message me, message Justin. This is something that I think to end this, because I think about myself when I would look at these podcasts. I look at Joe Rogan. I spent so much time looking at podcasts. And once I started making, I started to realize it's like, follow these people. They have social media. You will respond to someone who's like, you know what, I'm just in a place right now. I'm addicted to porn, or I don't know how to do this, or, I need some help here. These guys are literally, you have to humble yourself to get to that place. And these guys will help you. They're one DM away. That's how I started my channel. Just DMing people. Hey, I need help. I'm starting this out. Whatever it is, anything, literally anything. You're trying to find a job, whatever it is, reach out, man. We're here to help you guys. So we all want to win and see other men win and be strong and destroy the fake BS weak man that has been given to us from Homer Simpson and Family Guy and those guys. We are meant for so much more than that. So, and Justin is one of the guys in that arena. So thanks again, brother.
Appreciate you, man.